Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
And I am the Gypsy King Off-White.
Yes, he is. Off-White.
But there's actually parts of me that are like kind of black and red and green. So I'm not all white.
That's why you're off.
Yes.
You want to tell us what you have with you?
No. Well, this is my scepter. Or, well, it's a turtle rattle. But, you know, whatever. Scepter, turtle rattle.
Yes, so the Gypsy King.
Well, I'm following my shamanic gypsy roots.
Okay.
We'll do a little exercise in the day.
That's not very nice.
We've been
if I do that to Lisa, it would bust into flames.
He's just scared of me. We've been getting feedback from viewers, and there's been those who've been wanting some a little more personal shows. Maybe not that personal, John. And with our experiences and so forth, and we wanted to bring on a couple of guests that work with us a lot, and so we can talk about their experiences, and we're just going to talk about what we want to talk about today.
Yay, we're talking about whatever the heck we want to do.
So,
oh, I'm not even on the chat.
So anyone who has questions, feel free to get in the chat room and ask. Probably ought to avoid, questions about John's felony record.
I have never been in jail. I've been in handcuffs a few times. Whole nother story.
With us tonight, we have two guests. We have Lisa Brown.
Hi.
Hi. Speak up.
Hi.
That was kind of wimpy.
Hi. I know you talk louder than that.
I do.
Yeah, that's my big ass sippy cup, Harry. Knock it off.
And we have Joy Johnston.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Well, both of you have investigated with us.
Hi.
Are you a cat now?
Hi.
How many energy drinks did you have?
Just one.
Okay.
Maybe we should have had it.
One too many. I have never had too many energy drinks. Eric, paranormal investigators, that's our food of choice.
That's right. Goes through the veins.
No, literally.
I'm gonna start this off and put John on the spot.
Shoot! I already told you guys what scares the shit out of me. I mean, the poop. It's Lisa. We're on an internet show. We can say shit.
You don't have to say fecal matter?
No,
we
can say whatever the heck we want.
Okay, since you went there, what does scare you with the paranormal?
You!
Why do I scare you?
Because you're scary. Witches scare me. See?
What proof do you have?
What? That witches scare me?
Yeah.
Because they do. I don't have to have proof that a witch scares me. What kind of proof do you need? I'm frightened. I pee my pants a little bit every time I see you.
Are you afraid of certain types of witches or all witches?
Just all of them.
Just all of them?
I scare the crap out of them all the time. I poop my pants. I have to wear bandanas every time I go to a tour.
I'm just kind of curious why I scare him.
You don't. What scares me? Well, I've been face-to-face psychically with a Loa, so I'm not, I would say a negative, violently negative.
Okay, why don't you tell everyone what you mean by a Loa?
Yeah.
Oh, like a voodoo, that's like a god Loa.
A tulpa.
Yeah, tulpa. It was Brigitte, however you want to say it. Face-to-face with her is humbling, to say the least. She is she's a keeper of cemeteries, so that should give you a really good understanding of her overall look. It's very creepy, and the best way I could describe it was Mama from the movie was the best way that I could describe that. So, yeah, she had a very black, wispy body, and her face was very obvious that it was.
What was that?
See how that's going? I did not want to say her name. Now I'm in trouble. So that really wasn't scary though. I mean, because she really wasn't frightening to me. So, I mean, probably frightening to me would be, I don't know what would scare me.
Inhuman.
Inhuman, and that wouldn't even scare me if it wasn't violent. I mean, I think probably a violent inhuman, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess we should say, let's set just a minute when we're talking about Tulpa or Loa. People get certain ideas. Not everything connected with voodoo or conjuring is negative. And Bridget isn't.
No, she's not really. She's a defender. I mean, she'll defend women and children. And if you're a guy that treats women and children bad, I feel sorry for you. But she's really not a bad Loa at all. I mean, she's really. I did some reading up on her. She was. I forget who she's married to. I'm not.
The Baron.
The Baron, and definitely, she's a protector of cemeteries. So. And like I said, I really wasn't scared of her. I could see her without even trying, and it was pretty wild.
And I think that if you have a tulpa that has been invoked, it can get interesting in that if they aren't cared for and offerings made, they get bored and they go off and do their own thing.
Right.
And so that's when things happen that people wonder if it's good or bad.
Right. And that's, it's just like anything else. If you treat something badly, it's going to treat you badly,
Okay.
I'm actually more scared of Lisa Brown.
Yeah, I have my moments, especially at work.
Works in a library, I don't want to lie to you.
Yeah. The things that I see, it's horrible.
It'd be kind of like working at Walmart.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, at times.
Yeah.
So what were you starting to say, John?
I don't remember now.
I'm sorry.
That was. I mean, I don't know that I would be scared of an inhumane as if it wasn't being inhuman. I mean, I don't know if it wasn't being violent.
Well, and I guess that's a topic is, why do people get scared?
I think it's society. I think it's how society has raised or has bombarded us with what is correct.
Right.
We're taught to believe growing up that certain spiritual belief structures are evil or negative, and I fought that in my own life, and I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up in a biblical sense. I didn't go to churches. The only time I've been to Christian churches is on my own, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not putting any religion down. I'm just saying that's their belief structure. And really, if people would get out and study them, they'll find that that's not the case in most cases. Now, there's negative and crappy people in every spiritual belief, with the exception, I always say this, with the exception of probably Buddhism, because, well, really, come on.
I've never really met a negative Buddhist.
Right. I mean, so you're going to find that. I mean, we find it in witchcraft and shamanic cultures and, Christian cultures, Muslim cultures, Jewish culture. I mean, all of it, is going to have some sort of negative connotation. And I can't really see you because of my hair.
I'm sorry.
Take it from here.
Can you see me now?
Can you see me now?
Can you see me now?
I can hear you now. Oh, gosh, she's talking. So really, I think a lot of what people is a misconception of spiritual belief. I'm not scooting in. I can't.
There you go. Better.
I was on camera before. I can see myself. I'm right there. I think there's a misconception on a lot of the spiritual beliefs out there that there is entirely negative. I don't even think, and we all know that there's negative in everyone, but there's a lot of witches that I know that are negative. negative. I mean, even if they walk a gray line, it's not negative. And even some of them that walk too far black one way aren't really negative people. They just like to go in that area, you know.
But what do you guys think? Why do you think people have a fear of the supernatural?
Or just natural. Doesn't have to be supernatural. It's super.
I don't know. It's, you know, I think it's a lot of what he says. It's how we're ingrained, you know, when we're children. You know, we get stories like boogeyman, don't do this, don't do that. Some of it, I wonder, is just part of being a human being. It's almost a primal reaction to the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, going back as far as there have been human beings, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, especially in more primitive times, what you don't know can kill you. So
a lot of this is just a protective instinct.
Well, I think a lot of that, you know, a lot of the connotations that certain religions have come from when Christianity was in its infancy, and they were trying to get people away from the Christian church. And unfortunately, it's stuck with it, and it's just, and really, it's not true. I mean, if somebody were to study an earth-based religion, truthfully study it, they would find that there's really no negative to it at all. They walk a very balanced life in nature, and that's pretty much it. You know, nature including all humanity and so forth. So I think that if people, and I don't want to turn this into a religious discussion because I can go forever, but I think if people were to actually study the earth-based faiths, any of them, they would realize that there's more to it than just the negative connotation that it has.
well, I think that the other aspect of it is the sense of the going the other way towards religion and the connotations of the demonic that people get. And, you know, I certainly am not going to say that there aren't very negative forces out there that can have an effect. There are, but I think that those fears are preyed on not only in institutions, but media, etc. So that I think there's often, I mean, we've all been on investigations and where you'll have someone that reacts to something that happens much more fearfully than the rest, and I think it has to do with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all see the same thing, but, you know, it's how it's perceived.
Right,
Yeah.
it's through your own experience and perceptions of things you have or have not experienced.
I'm not going to lie. A full body operation, I'd probably pee myself. I mean, you know,
Well,
come
it's
on.
startling. I think
It is
regardless
startling.
of whether
I've
or
seen
not you're
it.
frightened,
I mean,
it's just startling to have something suddenly, you know, hear something or see something.
I bet I jumped 55 feet one time. I turned around, there was one right behind me. I mean, I wasn't expecting that to do
I
it.
do that
Even though I'm
when
there
I was
looking
just
for it, I'm not expecting it. You know?
Right, at that moment, yeah.
So I felt him there, and I turned around and he was there.
and I think that's the, you know, that's a distinction that isn't talked about enough, is because you're startled, or even when you are looking for something and you find it, that's different than it being negative.
Mm-hmm.
And your own flight or fight
Right.
instinct that kicks in, I think people perceive, oh, it's negative, and I have to worry.
Right. You just have that biological response to it that you can't control, and then you attach that to something really dangerous or fearful that it might not be.
Exactly.
Those are some snazzy ass boots.
Oh,
Look at those.
Pretty big.
wow.
Woo! You gotta get those on.
They would hurt really bad.
You gotta get those on video.
I don't know if I could get my leg up that high.
You gotta wear fancy boots like that. They gotta be on TV.
It's always hard to keep John focused.
Well, look at those boots. They got wagon wheels on them even.
Yeah.
Look at that. You should have some of them little metal ends on it.
Okay. If I had a newspaper, I'd say
Some need spurs too. Little metal ends and spurs. Ching, 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 ching. That's what I want spurs for. Ching, ching. Okay. Whoosh, whoosh. And cut people.
He's the negative.
They do it in the like fun.
Now, that all this being said, you guys have come out to investigations quite a bit, and I think you've gotten hooked.
Definitely, yes, yeah.
Tell me why.
Initially, I think when I started coming, I really enjoyed the historical aspect of it because you guys do a really good job of talking about area history. Well, you're learning.
Never.
You're learning.
I goof off.
But the history, I think, is what sucked me in initially. But I've been to some of these sites repeatedly now, and now I'm just waiting for something to happen. So it's kind of exciting. And also how different it is each time you go. The energy is different. Things might or might not happen. So it's always just, every time you go, it's almost like an experience.
Yeah, it's not like the same movie or
Right,
whatever.
right.
Exactly. What's the most interesting thing you've experienced, Lisa?
Probably the Olivia. That was, because I went there twice, and the first time, the basement, actually, that's the only time I've been really nervous on one of the tours, because there was something about that basement that unnerved me. That I wasn't frightened per se, but my sister was with me, and one of us had a flashlight, and as soon as I think the lights went out, and my sister did this to me, and we were just I was clinging to her, because it was just, the lights were out, it was kind of a spooky space, somebody had been, mortally wounded down there, in basements, they're just kind of creepy.
But I think that's a good example. There are some places that are just charged with a lot of energy, and the Olivia Apartments in Joplin, Missouri are one of them.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool because it's this beautiful decaying building where at one time you could see how grand and gorgeous it was. And, now a lot of it's just falling apart, but you'll see the beauty in it. But even just upstairs, on the 5th floor in that dining room, and in the smoking room, I think the second time we were in the building, I remember turning to you saying, is it weird that I smell cigar smoke? Because I smelled cigar smoke or pipe smoke, and I asked you if it was possible for it to still be in the walls, because I knew it was the smoking room. And you said, not usually, not. And I was smelling it in the air. It was like somebody was right next to me smoking a pipe, because I was scenting it in the air as opposed to being next to a wall and smelling it. And so that was really neat.
And I think that's something that people don't always think about, is that experiences with paranormal are not just visual or auditory, that you get sense and so forth with it too, and tobacco is a common one. The Olivia is definitely one place that I've been probably more on guard than a lot of places, simply for the amount of energy there. And we've had EVPs there, things like I Hate You. One was I Hate You Shag, and it was interesting because the person who was in the room at the time was a team member at the time his name was Brian, but his nickname was Shaggy, but no one had ever mentioned that. And so you get I Hate You Shag, but you get a lot of anger, and again, just because there's anger, I don't equate that with negativity
or demonic.
But I think that goes back to the events there. You had a tragic explosion, you had great pain and fear, and I think it just anger at his own situation.
Everybody wants to know what you're scared of.
What I'm scared of?
What are you scared of? And Eric says my camel.
Your camel.
Which I can understand. Have you ever been near a spitting camel?
Yeah, that camel
sucks.
That camel is scary, I tell you.
A spitting camel. Okay. So exercise the demon.
Yes, I do try to stay away from John's camel. What scares me?
I'm thinking about you, pervert.
I think I'm missing book club for this, so this is pretty entertaining.
Book club or us?
I know.
Yeah,
I think I chose correctly.
Well, good, thank you. What am I scared of? I'm scared of missing the Holy Grail of the full body apparition, of the actual contact. I've been startled. I've been nervous a couple of times. After Jon has been with me once yeah. And that was at the...
It's the only time I've ever seen Lisa, like, freak. Not really freak, but she was worried. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was at the Bordello in Galena, Kansas. And I've been there a lot of times, and yeah, there is something that's very angry there. It's one place that shadow people actually run at you instead of away. Yeah, that night I had something very angry go through me, and I was more angry at it because I've been there enough, and it went over the line. I've always been told that I'm not scared of a whole lot. I've always joked in all aspects of my life, not just this, that I'm not scared by a whole lot. I'm intimidated by less, and I think that's not irreverent. It's just that I don't get scared real easily, and things don't run me off. Except your camera. Gee, did I leave him speechless? Okay. No comment?
I got nothing.
Got nothing. We should write this down.
I know.
Yeah,
I have stuff, but I don't even think an internet show is allowed to say that.
He's just going to save that for later, I guess. I'm sorry.
No, it's like he's silent. This is rare.
Take a mental note of the date and time.
That's right.
Are we giving up on you?
I'm used to it.
Okay, Julie, now you can kind of quiet. Now,
She's kind of quiet anyway. She doesn't talk much.
well, now I'm curious. You've kind of gotten into the field pretty recently, is that right?
Yep.
What brought you out?
Actually, I had a friend at work that had came. They couldn't stay the whole time, but I've watched the shows on TV, so I've always been interested. And whenever I found out about you guys, so I came and I tried it out and kept trying it out and kept trying it out.
Yeah, she hasn't missed a tour since.
Yeah.
That was like 6 months ago, I think, or
Oh my
something.
gosh.
No. AVG, we don't want to do that right now. Go away. We're busy. So, anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So what brought you back the second time?
Me. My antics.
Well, I really like the history. Like she was saying, that sucks you in. But, gosh, I just don't even remember the first one now.
The first one was the Opera House, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you actually caught evidence, which I think probably is what dragged her back.
That, and I really like the echo box.
Yeah, it's fun to play with.
I like to be able to hear the responses and stuff like that. Also, the fact that the money, like I grew up in Carthage, and actually just a few blocks from the square. So the Bees discount buildings, both of them, were a big part. I mean, my mom didn't drive, so we walked up there almost every day. So the money being able, for the tours, goes to preserve the buildings and restore. And so that means a lot to me. That's my history, that's my memories. But I mean, just the paranormal period interests me. So
what's your holy grail? What do you want? What do you want to get out of investigating?
I honestly don't know. I like to find as much as I can. The most interesting thing I've seen so far was that night we had an investigation at the Opera House. We were in the basement, and we were watching a shadow just play peekaboo, I guess you could say. I think there might have been two. They were different sizes, but the whole time we were down there, pretty much. I haven't really thought about, as far as my holy grail, what I would want.
And that basement's pretty active.
It is.
That's pretty wild.
Well, the first time, we heard the footsteps.
We've only done it a few times because it was closed off to us investigating it for a while. But now that we've gotten down there, it's pretty neat. There's footsteps and lots of responses. People get in touch, feelings, shadows. I even heard one pass gas. I ain't gonna lie.
Are
It
you
was a ghost,
sure?
it was not
Are
me.
you sure it was the ghost?
Yeah, somehow I have a feeling now.
I'm just saying. Oh,
I'm still here.
you're not working. Who built this thing?
So tell me, you guys have watched the shows. What do you think is the real difference? Because there's a lot of people who, they haven't been on investigations. They see the shows. What do you think is the biggest difference between what you see on TV and how things are really done?
I think you guys are a lot more respectful. You're much less dramatic about it. Honestly, I can't even watch a lot of the shows anymore. I know we ruined them. No, it's,
Really?
Yeah, it's seriously. Well, they're coming to it from a different place, I think. Not, they're in it to entertain and to shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that that's what you guys are in it for.
I don't even think if we got a show, it would be. I mean, I think if we got a show and they told us that we had to do it that way, we wouldn't do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We would tell them to piss off and just walk away.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. That's not me.
Now, I mean, we can do a lot of entertaining stuff, just like we do here.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. This is entertainment.
Right. But when in all the investigations I've been on, you're just unflappable. I mean, you get excited when something's happening in a good way.
Also flat.
Unflappable.
All right, my girl.
On TV you see people
John needs a
freaking out.
I do. What the hell is flappable? Is that a fat joke?
Unflappable.
Oh, unflappable. So I'm skinny.
Unflappable.
Oh, so I need a sandwich, is what you're telling me.
Oh.
You need a dictionary.
No. Flappable. Good.
I think she's saying that we don't get scared.
It's a compliment.
And you don't fall on the floor every 5 minutes.
No.
I could.
Yeah, and then we aren't.
I can't get it up, but I'll get that in there.
And we aren't asking the ghost to push an axe over our head.
Yeah, I mean, Paranormal Science Lab as a whole pretty much works from a spiritual standpoint, and that's, we're all very spiritual people. I think that we all have our different paths as closely related as they are, but being negative and abusive to a spirit is to me as disrespectful as me doing it to a human being. I just can't fathom acting that way. Number one, I don't want to get the shit knocked out of me because I pissed them off, and it happens. And they can do it a lot harder than the biggest man that I've ever been hit by. So I'm not really, not really something I'm interested in. And second, it's just not respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know you guys heard the story because I tell it as a preface to people. Is I have seen people get put on their ass. I did say the A word. Ass. By provoking,
Yeah.
and literally seen a 6'7", 300-pound man put on his bed. Actually, in Neologia, and it's not worth it. And the thing is, I don't think that you get any better evidence. And if anything, you probably get whatever you do get. It's not as good evidence because they're basically telling you off and not giving you any information.
Yeah, we're there to try to piece it all together. I mean, that's kind of our goal, especially since we deal with historical locations. So, the ticking them off where they don't want to respond is not, number one, good for tours, and number two, it doesn't get us anywhere. So,
hey John, what's the most personal experience you've had? I mean, as far as the paranormal, to make you say, okay, this was a spirit.
In a tour or anywhere?
Anywhere.
Oh, I've walked through my grandfather in my house before. I've seen my grandmother. I have one that likes to watch Star Trek with me. I get looked at through doors. I get some that look down the hall at me. I mean, I don't know. I've seen them my whole life. I think probably the first one was had a shadow man that stood in my door. I've told this on tours too, but I had a shadow man that stood in my doorway as a kid, and I didn't think a whole lot. He never really felt ominous in any way, so it really wasn't a big deal. My sister actually saw him and actually gave him a name, and I didn't know that till years later. So that was kind of interesting. She called him George. But he actually stood, because our doorways were across the hall, like, or right across. Oh, come on, library girl, what am I looking for?
Directly. Adjacent, catty corner.
Pick one, I don't care.
Directly across.
Thank you. directly. Isn't that
Like
easy?
you and I are right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. You can see each other's doorways.
Yes. So she would see him standing, and he was very tall. He was at least as tall as the door, probably just a hair taller than the door. And he stood there. But see, there was a lot of Native American, and I grew up in a spiritual household, and I went through sweat lodges at a young age. So we'd had shamans on our property, and I know that there had been an encampment on our actual land. And we had 2 natural ponds, so that would have been pretty common, you know. Both of them were spring fed. So that was, I kind of think that he was probably Native American Indian of some sort, you know, and people are like, well, they weren't really that tall. Well, some of them were, and you're talking about energy now. You're not talking about any life. It's a whole other animal.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 35,000 feet tall when I'm dead. So I'm going to tell you that right now.
But yeah, and that's one thing. Shadow people are apparitions. It's not, you know, that, oh, you were 5'8" in life, you're going to be 5'8" as an apparition or a shadow person.
Well, and we've been on tours or not tours, but investigations where I would get information about the person there. We're talking not with us anymore. And they're like, well, she didn't really look like that when she passed away. Well, that's not maybe how she remembers herself, but she probably looked like that at some point in her life.
Right.
And that's, you know, when I'm gone, I'm going to be skinny. I mean, you know.
Hey, I'm going to be 25 again.
Heck yeah.
That's right.
Water frog.
Oh, no.
Do they still make those?
I don't know. I want to go to the Victoria's Secret and find out.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you would be escorted to the door, probably.
I've been in there before. They can't kick me out.
You start to act inappropriately, I'm sure they can.
I always act inappropriately.
You just squeeze the bra, not if someone's wearing it.
Oh, that's it. I can't just hang out in the dressing room.
Yeah.
They frown on that. Yes, they do frown on that.
Wow, no wonder I get out there so much.
No, I think that I kind of have a similar background as far as being into paranormal as John. I mean, I grew up on a farm that there were Civil War battles. I had a soldier that stood in my bedroom most nights, and I think he was on sentry. It's up on a hill, and it's a perfect lookout for where the battles were, and I think he was still just on post. And
well, that property you grew up on has a lot of historical meaning.
A lot of history.
Thank you. So I'm not going to say what. Yes, you're the library girl. You're the smart one. So I mean, there's a lot of historical background to the property. So there's.
Is he saying I'm hysterical?
Hysterical was what he started to say. See, you have no allies here tonight. I'm sorry.
I don't care. I can dish it right back out.
I know you can.
But some people may know this story, but I think what really got me interested in researching and investigating, and why are you staring at me?
I know, it's just that crazy.
I was looking at a house to buy.
It's not working.
Water pen.
I know. It's just like the spray bottle with these little cats.
Yes.
I'm a kitty. You agreed to be on this show. What is wrong with you? Don't you watch the show? No, you admit it. You don't. Just admit it.
Now she probably ever will.
I'm usually at family functions.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
But I was looking at a house to buy, and it was a turn of the century arts and craft home. Big, it was really nice. Actually, really considering putting in an offer. Till we were down in the basement, and I was standing in the center of the basement and had extremely cold spot come over me, and even colder sensation of a thumb being laid on one side of my throat and 4 fingers, one at a time, on the other side, holding my throat, and then it went through the back of my neck. And it's kind of at that point I decided I'm not really sure I want to do my laundry in this basement.
Chicken.
Well, I know, but that's a little up close and personal, you know, grabbing the throat. So then I walk over to an ante room in the basement where the agent was standing, and she was talking to my ex-husband and going on about, I don't know what they would have used this room for, and I walk to the door and look in, and there's antique apothecary cabinets, and there's 7 metal sinks against the wall, biggest drain you've ever seen in the floor. And I said, I do, it was the embalming room, and turned around and started up the stairs, and she comes after me and says, oh, well, I guess I should say that in the 1920s this was a mortuary. And
yeah, you should say that.
Yeah, and although
good to know,
I'd like to have that apothecary.
Oh, it was beautiful, but and in this state, it's not haunting or being a mortuary is not something that has to be disclosed. But there are states where you do have to disclose those things. But,
see, and I think you should. I mean, if you're, you know, people have asked me, well, it's a late 1800s, early 1900s home. Do you think it's haunted? Yeah, it probably is.
More than likely,
come on, history in the area and the year of the house. Come on now. My guess would be is look at how the tenants lived in it. If they were, you know, if they had it for like a year and are moving out, yeah, you might want to look into that a little deeper because there's something up. But if they lived there for 20, 30 years and, you know, just passed away and nobody wants to live there and they just want to sell it, then, you know, it's probably okay.
Yeah, you know, and that's one thing I run into is a lot of people who have stories that are in a haunted house and they're very comfortable with it. You know, they've lived there for a long time and they'll tell me the stories of there's a man there, there's a woman there, or whatever, and it doesn't bother them. And I think that's a misconception people have, that everyone who walks into a haunted house living there is terrified.
Right, yeah.
And that's, I'm not even sure that a majority of people are.
I hate to tell people, but probably 99% of the homes out there are haunted.
Yeah.
Sorry, but they are. I mean, that's just, you know, that, and people don't realize that it follows the ground generally, not the house.
Yeah.
And so, you know, even, well, this house is new, so.
Something happened there, right? Something happened there 100 years ago. You know?
Yeah.
I guess one of the, I guess I should say one of the situations that kind of startled me and concerned me for a moment more than most was actually at the Battlefield Park in Carthage.
Oh, yeah.
And we had investigated out there and we're leaving, and it's pretty dark. It was about midnight, but it was empty. And it had been an encampment multiple times in the Civil War. And I actually was kind of coming up the rear of the group, and all of a sudden, it was a sensation of almost like a heavy blanket being thrown over you, like a heavy, wet blanket. And you just felt like you were fighting through it, trying to get to air. You almost felt like you couldn't breathe, but you just felt like you were rooted there. And everyone is going on. I try to call out. Nothing comes out, can't be heard. For a second, it was almost that, you know, that horror movie second where you just feel like,
That would be scary.
It was. It was like, what the heck's going on, you know? And finally, it was probably 20 seconds, and I got through it. And in almost a movie thing, almost kind of stumbled forward, and I turn around, and behind me is a shadow person in the perfect shape of a Civil War soldier. You could see the cap, you could see the musket, and he was just kind of looking at me and just stood there a second and then turned around and walked away. And I think, again, I didn't see it as real negative. I think it was checking us out, checking out, are you a danger, are you a spy, that kind of thing. And then it's like, okay, I don't have an interest.
Well, I think, you know, a lot of people come on tours, they're expecting things like that to happen, and that is very uncommon.
Yeah,
I mean
that's
things
very
like
rare.
that, and really things things moving, sometimes shadow people. I mean, we've seen quite a few, but it doesn't happen every time we go to a tour.
That's why, but for me, that's my holy grail is I want to see something on one of the tours, but I've heard things and I've smelled things. And I've sensed things. I'm talking about the tobacco.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, nothing. The most dramatic thing was what happened at the Web City Public Library.
That
was quite dramatic.
It was pretty dramatic. It wasn't even paranormal. It was. But.
Well, and that's a good example. As you said, things are. It's always different.
Mm-hmm.
But there, and the irony was that two people actually saw an apparition.
That same night, right?
Within about 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And he was, the fellow that got so upset and kind of screamed, was the second one. And what was great about it was the first person had not said anything at that point. Mm-hmm. In fact, she had got a nauseous feeling, which is not uncommon for someone who experiences spirit. And she and another lady left. The other lady took her home because she wasn't feeling well. And so then while they were gone, this other fella sees the same description. They described the woman the same. They actually thought it was someone that was in the building. And then realized that they didn't have legs, but walked off. And then when the second lady came back, she said, "Oh, well, Lori has seen this and looked over, and that she was gone." And so the stories hadn't been compared, so it was two independent experiences, and that was pretty amazing. So I mean, it goes to show that even when you have a group of people there, things can happen. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty. That's one of the more interesting things that's happened on a public event. So.
I would love to see half a person walk away. That would be kind of cool.
Now, I have seen the apparition of. I don't even want to know what's going through your mind right now from the look of your face. I have seen an apparition that was fully formed down to the knees. A woman in a Victorian dress, actually in my house.
Shocker.
Coming down the stairwell.
If anybody's ever been to Lisa's house, it's like poltergeist or smorgasbord.
It is not.
Crap moving, stuff in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Somebody's making breakfast.
Well, I have a ghost in the kitchen.
Why did we lose video? There it goes. Okay. So.
Real quick, one thing I do want to get out to people, we have a lot of things coming up. We have events coming up that are going to be very interesting. We have public tours coming up September 27th, Web City Library, October 3rd at the Opera House, October 4th at Kendrick House, the 11th at Kendrick. Another one here at the John Wise Mansion, which has its own resident Shadow Man on the 17th, the 24th at the Opera House, and on the 31st we are having an event that is Old Ghosts of Joplin. It's going to be at the John Wise House. It's going to be at a special low rate, $5. We're going to have demonstrations of investigation. We're going to have lots of old ghost tales. We're going to have tarot readings and other things, and we want people to come out and support the community. And then we're also going to be adding some cemetery tours in the spring. So,
the reason that we're doing Kendrick 2 times in a row is because there's what's that going on?
Farm Girl Fest.
Yeah, and they're going to be having a reenactment sometime
on the 18th and 19th, I believe. Okay. Or 17th and 18th, I guess it is, something like that.
So and they wanted us out there to do that, which I found out I could be there, by the way.
Okay.
There were some questions on that, but. Doris cemetery tours. We don't want Doris on a cemetery tour. Karen, she's scared of her. Reading the chat room. So anyway, that's why we're going to be there, because they wanted us there for that. So we're going to be there 2 weekends in a row, and in Carthage 2 nights in a row.
When you do reenactments, does that tend to bring up more energy?
Yeah, I would think so. Sure, why not? Yeah. That's part of the biggest part of the history of that house. So I can't. I'm sitting on my hat. I'm like turn. Part of the history of that house, So I would think so. Yeah,
I didn't make it out there last year when they had the reenactment there, but I would imagine that.
So if they don't break any windows this year.
Yeah, last year they broke the window from the shop.
Repercussion.
McCannon.
Is it repercussion or percussion, library girl?
Repercussion.
No, percussion wave.
Oh. The repercussions of the shop.
You are my dictionary.
Sorry.
Oh, man.
I love you too, man.
We gotta get her talking more.
Oh yeah. So have you ever seen full body apparition?
I have not. I haven't had any.
Did you have any paranormal experiences prior to joining tours?
I've just always been interested. I mean, my grandma used to work at Fair Acres. What was it?
Fairview Acres,
And she would come and tell stories. You know, I was young at that time, but just I heard so many throughout the years. And
what was the most interesting thing that she was talking about?
there was a lady who used to work there that was there after, she died and everything. But I mean, she said that you would see her all the time. But I was fairly young. I mean, so it's just try to remember,
Yeah.
And then this is a location that originally it was a pork farm, and then it was a nursing home, and at times there would be mental patients there, things like that. So it was, and then it's since been torn down. So very active place. So
yeah, I'm a little different, I guess. Yeah, I've not had any.
Really? I mean, that's common. We have a lady that lives down on the square that said she lives on the square in Carthage and says she's never seen anything paranormal. I don't know how that's even possible. I'll be honest, but I mean, it happens. I mean, and I think that people tend to block it out because they don't want to see it.
mm-hmm.
I think that was my biggest. Even when I was younger, I was afraid that I was going to wake up and somebody was going to be standing.
Sure.
And
I still do.
I still do. I'll get that scared and I'll come around like it's going to save me or something.
I sleep with a teddy bear. I ain't gonna lie.
I don't even have
I have a white Coca-Cola bear.
Okay, he like those things.
Okay.
Good for even tonight.
Wow.
What an image, right?
What? I'm not judging.
You're judging.
No, we were just trying to get the image out.
I know. You wrap around a Coca-Cola polar bear.
In a body pillow.
That's all. I mean, I've got the body pillow and a dog, but usually that's...
Do that with a cat.
Yeah.
You need to cuddle.
No, my sister's cat does. I can't get him off these days.
He cuddles in his own way.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, what's the most unusual place you guys know that's haunted?
Unusual?
Mm-hmm. That someone wouldn't think of being haunted. What comes to mind is we've had actually a lot of experiences investigating bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I never thought about that. Well, you mean like it could be in a house? Yeah, that would probably be the oddest place that we've gotten an EVP was in a bathroom, and it wasn't. Thank goodness. I was really worried because we're doing an investigation in the bathroom. Okay.
Yeah.
No residual.
Yeah.
No residual toilet.
Yeah, there was no grunting and groaning.
But interesting.
Rough.
But people die on the toilet all the time.
Yeah, but you don't want to hear that.
I know. You don't need to be investigating that kind of haunting.
That's sort of thing that people don't think about. You end up in a bathroom more than you would think.
Yeah.
And actually, the most unusual, I think, is the courthouse here in the county that the women's bathroom is haunted.
That's odd.
It is.
It's probably a pervert.
There's a shadow person in there, and lots of people have seen him or her. Why the bathroom? I have no idea.
That's really weird.
It is, but I don't know why.
I think one of the oddest things, the one that made me think the most, and this is going to sound funny, is the EVP on Hungry.
Yeah.
Because it really makes you stop and think. I mean, did he not get to eat that day? I mean, why is he saying he's hungry?
You might tell that a little bit.
Well, what it was, and we think that he is part of the Joplin tornado. And that was actually during the Twisted Believers pre-investigation of this house. myself and Lisa's son Benton were talking about going to Waffle House, and sure enough, there was and it was very obvious because nobody was in that room, and it said hungry, and that really blows my mind because it makes you think about, that meal you skip because you want to lose 10 pounds. Screw that.
You may not get your last meal.
You may not get a last meal. What about that donut? I love donuts and cookies and cake. No, I'm going to eat it.
Well, because sort of the flip side of that is we don't usually get a lot of EVPs about emotion.
Right. That's an odd one.
You don't get a lot of things about being sad or lonely or anything like that, but then we get that someone's hungry.
Right. And it's very scary sounding because it's all hungry, it's all drawn out, but it's just people, and that goes into, we could go talk about that forever. We got about 4 minutes left, but it takes a lot of energy to talk. When you're when you're on the other side, and floating around is one thing, actually making it audible is another, so.
Here's a question for you guys. Mm-hmm. What's your advice to people who are interested in investigating or getting involved?
Come on one of the tours. Really, that's a good place to start. It's, because that's how you got hooked.
No, I didn't get hooked. I got dragged.
You got dragged, kicking and screaming. You were pretty enthusiastic, because I was at the Olivia. I think you had come back for a second night.
I only came back because my friends were gone. Really?
That's true. Tracy and all them, but you were really into it. So sure.
No.
Don't deny it.
Oh.
I can see it.
Well, that's right. Friday night he's claiming that he's been in prison since.
Yeah.
So.
It was duct tape.
It was duct tape. Yeah. That's really the best way, I think, to experience it firsthand. Right. You went to Gray, because you said friends.
I was like you guys. I watched the shows. That was the whole point of me going there. And I think Tracy shared it, and I said that'd be fun. So I came, and that's the reason that I ended up here. Somebody saved me.
Well, it's nice that we have this option, because I think more and more people are interested in this because of the TV shows, and you hear about private groups that maybe do, because I know for a while there was one at Southern, and there are other groups around, but you're the first one I'd heard about that was advertising opportunities for people to come and learn about history and explore some of these sites. So it's a good opportunity in our community. Not every community has that. So.
And I think it's good for a lot of people to come on a tour and kind of see how it's done. I mean, what we do is not 100% of what we do at a private investigation, because there's a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
But it's a good part, and it's how we actually investigate. I mean, we don't get into like these crazy knockdown drag out fights or anything. We really just try to talk.
Is it more of a condensed version of your private investigations, though? Do you
think so?
Because usually the tours are just a few hours.
Well, you got a lot of people, too. I mean, sometimes the private investigations don't go that long.
Really?
I mean, really, you can do a private investigation in a couple hours. And really, I think we are been successful that way because we're not violent. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ticked off. We're getting information quickly. Yeah. So it doesn't take us 8 days to get evidence, if there's evidence to get.
Because, if they're upset, then they often aren't going to cooperate, it takes longer.
1 minute, people.
1 minute, I know.
I don't even know who's on some show.
We really appreciate you guys coming out, and I know ignore him.
You would miss me if I weren't here.
And I know we're going to have you round up some more, and Julie's actually joined the group. And,
that's awesome. Good for you.
I wouldn't be surprised if this one didn't actually.
It's coming.
She's too busy with her book club.
I am very busy, but it's coming, yeah.
Good. And so we wanted to have a chat session since people have been asking about some of these things. And we appreciate it. Next week, we're going to have Teal Gray on.
Teal's going to be on?
Teal's going to be on.
Yay! Yes, I like Teal.
She is a psychic, and she does all kinds of crazy things, and she's going to be very interesting to talk to.
And you guys stay on there, because Selena Rome, Closer to Death, with Steve Santini, the world's most extreme escape artist. He's pretty scary looking.
It's going to be a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
means we're on the air, right?
Uh-oh. Good evening. This is Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
And I am the Gypsy King, Off-White.
Yes, he is. Off-White.
But there's actually parts of me that are like kind of black and red and green. So I'm not all white.
That's why you're off.
Yes.
You want to tell us what you have with you?
No? Well, this is my scepter. Or, well, it's a turtle rattle. But, you know, whatever. Scepter, turtle rattle.
Yes, so the Gypsy King.
Well, I'm following my shamanic gypsy roots.
Okay.
We'll do a little exercise in the days and stuff.
That's not very nice.
We've
If I do that to Lisa, it would bust into freaking flames.
He's just scared of me. We've been getting feedback from viewers, and there's been those who've been wanting some a little more personal shows. I
don't know what would scare me.
Inhuman,
but and that wouldn't even scare me if it wasn't violent. I mean, I think probably a violent inhuman, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess we should say, let's set just a minute when we're talking about Tulpa or Loa. People get certain ideas. Not everything connected with voodoo or conjuring is negative. And Bridget isn't.
No, she's not really. She's a defender. I mean, she'll defend women and children. And if you're a guy that treats women and children bad, I feel sorry for you. But she's really not a bad Loa at all. I mean, she's really. I did some reading up on her. She was. I forget who she's married to. I'm not.
The Baron.
The Baron, and definitely, she's a protector of cemeteries. So, and I like I said, I really wasn't scared of her. It just, I could see her without even trying, and it was pretty wild.
And I think that if you have a tulpa that has been invoked, it can get interesting in that if they aren't cared for and offerings made.
I've been face to face psychically with a Loa, so I'm not. I would say a negative, violently negative.
Okay, why don't you tell everyone what you mean by a Loa?
Yeah.
Oh, like a voodoo. That's like a god Loa.
A tulpa.
Yeah, tulpa. It was Brigitte, however you want to say it. Face to face with her is humbling, to say the least. She is she's a keeper of cemeteries, so that should give you a really good understanding of her overall look. It's very creepy, and the best way I could describe it was Mama from the movie was the best way that I could describe that. So. Yeah, she had a very black, wispy body, and her face was very obvious that, it was her face.
What was that?
See how that's going? I did not want to say her name, now I'm in trouble. So that really wasn't scary though, because she really wasn't frightening to me. So, probably frightening to me would be,
maybe we should have that.
One too many. I have never had too many energy drinks. Eric, paranormal investigators, that's our food of choice.
That's right. Goes through the veins.
No, literally.
I'm gonna start this off and put John on the spot.
Shoot! I already told you guys what scares the shit out of me. The poop. It's Lisa. We're on an internet show. We can say shit.
You don't have to say fecal matter?
No, we can say whatever the heck we want.
Okay, since you went there, what does scare you with the paranormal?
You!
Why do I scare you?
Because you're scary. Witches scare me. See?
What proof do you have?
That witches scare me?
Yeah.
Because they do? I don't have to have proof that a witch scares me. What kind kind of pushy and me. I'm frightened. I pee my pants a little bit every time I see you.
Are you afraid of certain types of witches or all witches?
Just all of them.
Just all of them?
I scare the crap out of them all the time. I poop my pants. I have to wear bandanas every time I go to a tour.
I'm just kind of curious why I scare him.
You don't. What scares me? Well,
Maybe not that personal, John. And with our experiences and so forth, and we wanted to bring on a couple of guests that work with us a lot, and so we can talk about their experiences, and we're just going to talk about what we want to talk about today.
yay, we're talking about whatever the heck we want to do.
So,
Oh, I'm not even on the chat. Uh-oh.
so anyone who has questions, feel free to get in the chat room and ask. Probably ought to avoid, questions about John's felony record, things like that.
I have never been in jail. I've been in handcuffs a few times. Whole nother story.
With us tonight, we have two guests. We have Lisa Brown.
Hi.
Hi, speak up.
Hi.
That was kind of wimpy.
Hi. I know you talk louder than that.
I do.
Yeah, that's my big-ass sippy cup, Harry. Knock it off.
And we have Joy Johnston.
Hi.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Well, both of you have investigated with us.
Hi.
Quite a bit. Are you a cat now?
How many energy drinks did you have?
Just one.
Okay.